The story begins with MC apologizing together with his friends. This is because he was late with the promotion of Evergreen, the best resort destination in the South. It is a very warm place, an ultra-luxurious resort where you can enjoy a romantic getaway. You can swim with the turtles, as well as experience a 4-dimensional underwater adventure. If you have not tried it yet, you should do it immediately, as it is a place with a rich gastronomic culture. The craftsmanship is the best in the world, with premium quality that no one else can match. It is not only fun in the summer, since Evergreen has the whole year to enjoy. Whether young or old, man or woman, this is a city worth visiting for everyone. After Dominic presents this project, he asks what they thought. His colleagues do not know what to think, and Callan complains, since everyone is starving and he no longer wants to work on this project. The dwarf agrees, because continuing to work without eating is horrible. Cindy is even crying because she felt embarrassed and even used up all her energy. Patrick says he is busy and still insists on doing this work. MC questions whether they really thought they were going to do all of this on an empty stomach and shows that he prepared samgyetang, since nothing beats it for recovering energy. Everyone's expressions change completely, since now they will be able to eat and get back to work. A few years earlier, MC was lying on the ground. At that moment, Callan arrived with his gang, asking how he managed to get to that place. MC does not really know what to answer and simply says that he walked a lot. He says he understands and, laughing, wants to know if he is good at anything. Dominic thinks about this, and sometime after that event, he throws a huge pot of food onto the table and calls everyone to eat. The village seemed calm until everyone appeared running like crazy, since they were starving for lunchtime. They approach as if they had not eaten in more than 10 years, and MC shouts for them to get in line in an orderly manner. Everyone obeys without complaining and is served one by one. Dominic is responsible for lunch in that village. The town is called Evergreen, a fishing village so small that it does not even appear on the map. It was founded by retired mercenaries, but deep down, they are genuinely good people. MC is a war refugee, but even so, he was taken in by the bald man. As a refugee, he faced nothing but indifference and contempt, and these mercenaries extended a hand to him and saved him. And so, 1 year after settling in the village, he was able to show his gratitude as a cook. Callan picks up the spoonful of soup and is amazed by the flavor, since it is absolutely incredible, as always. That day's lunch was a creamy soup with sautéed vegetables and grilled homemade sausage. He started by sautéing the carrots, mushrooms, potatoes, and onions until they became tender. Then, he added the flour and milk base, letting it cook. Finally, he seasoned it with salt, finishing it with a touch of herbs for aroma. He knows it is a simple creamy soup, but it was definitely enough to make everyone happy. The village chief asks if the sausage he is seeing was not made the day before, and even so, he devours it like crazy since it is delicious. MC knew the sausage would work, and now that he has perfected his recipe, he will be able to sell it for good money. Only then does he notice Alta and calls the bald man's attention, since he is skipping the vegetables. Callan asks him not to complain, since not even his wife complains that much. Dominic does not care about that, because he is old enough to know that he must eat his vegetables. He realizes that he is carrying the old habits from his past life. This is because he was a nutritionist in the Republic of Korea. He was an ordinary office worker in his 30s, and that was his past life. Callan asks MC if he will be free on the weekend, since, starting next week, Dominic will be the village chief. MC does not pay attention at first, and when he realizes it, he is shocked by this absurdity, to the point of shouting what he means by that, and how he can say something so huge so casually. Callan tells him not to worry, since being village chief is not a big deal. Another man approaches and says that most village chiefs do not know how to read, using the bald man as an example. He agrees with this, although it is not something to be proud of. Dominic thinks it is absurd that he is being appointed just because of something like that, since anyone can learn to read, and he has kind of already accepted that he will have to take that position. Callan agrees, since the higher-ups take care of everything, and the travel expenses are covered by the village fund. In addition, he tells him to get ready, since he must leave in 2 days. 2 days later, at the Lord's castle, a meeting is taking place, and one of the men announces that the Lord's birthday is coming up, and that everyone must prepare the gifts so they do not repeat. The old man agrees, since the previous year it became awkward when the gifts were the same. The mustached man asks them to settle it fairly with a cockfight. The discussion continues, and MC realizes that the meeting is completely useless, until he remembers that the Lord rarely leaves his house and used to be a knight. At that moment, Wayne, the maid, appears, asking them to eat and only continue the meeting afterward. Dominic is happy, since he will finally be able to taste the castle food, and follows the maid, already imagining that he will need to ask for the recipe. As he approaches, he is amazed by how beautiful the dishes are. The bread is tasty since it uses high-quality flour. The seafood stew has an incredible flavor, but one thing impressed him more, which was the grilled intestines. The chef is surprised that he knows this dish, and Dominic starts drooling, since it is the first time he has seen it, but the intestines were cleaned in a surprisingly good way, and he admits that he had no idea he was in the presence of someone so skilled. The chef thanks him and says that the Lord eats all kinds of meat, so he became skilled in that area. He serves a little more and decides to ask if, by any chance, the village has already decided what birthday gift it will choose for the Lord. MC says no, since he has not thought about it yet. The chef approaches and suggests offering a barrel of alcoholic drink instead of meat. Dominic is not confident because the village does not have anything of that quality, but the man tells him not to worry, since, when it comes to alcohol, the Lord drinks anything. MC thanks him for the suggestion, but imagines that if the Lord eats like this every day, gout will come knocking at his door. The chef does not know what he is talking about, and he explains that it is a condition that causes a lot of pain in a person and usually starts in the toes. The man listens to this whole explanation and tells him to hurry up and eat, since he is talking too much. Dominic thanks him and realizes that his old professional habit is surfacing again. He walks around the castle a little, but gets startled, since out of nowhere, his vision starts to darken and he simply passes out. A group of people appears and carries him to another room. Sometime later, he wakes up and notices that someone is in front of him. Sinclair apologizes, because he did not want to be so brutal. Dominic says there is no problem, but inside, he has no idea what the hell is going on. This is because there are two armed guys, and one wrong move could get him killed. He does not really know how he should address him, and one of the guards tells him to only speak when ordered, but Sinclair tells him to lower his tone of voice, since he is being irritating. The man immediately bows, apologizing, and the bearded man introduces himself as the former lord of that territory. The MC shouts, apologizing if he did something wrong, but the man tells him not to make noise as he had asked before. Only then does he realize what might be happening and asks if he really has gout. Sinclair confirms it, despite not even knowing what it is, and asks if he knows anything else about this curse. The MC cannot believe the guy is calling gout a curse. The MC does not know what nonsense this is, because gout is the accumulation of uric acid due to a terrible diet, and there is not much mystery to it. However, he does not see how he can say that it is a medical condition, because the madman will look at him as if he were a healer or a dark wizard. He imagines that, in reality, if the Lord thought that, he would have already thrown him into a dungeon and not into a room. So, his conclusion is that this man is desperate. Imagining that, he asks if the swelling was sudden and if a sharp pain appeared around the toes or ankles. That is because the pain tends to be stronger at night or in the early hours of the morning, and, sometimes, it is not the feet. It can start in the elbow or in the joints, and he asks if the description is more or less like that. Sinclair confirms it, since he was accurate. Dominic does not beat around the bush and explains that it is not a curse, but a condition called gout. The elder becomes confused by this and asks what causes this condition. He answers that the main reason is diet. That is because there is a compound called purine present in large quantities, and it is a combination of factors that makes the problem start at the tips of the feet. The Lord does not quite understand, since he has lived like this his whole life and has always been in perfect condition. The MC believes it is possible that the digestive system weakened with age and accumulated it over the years, and points out that, since he is not a doctor, he is only giving his best guess. The guy does not understand how he can know about such a rare condition without being a doctor. Dominic knows that this is exactly the moment when he needs to speak up. He explains that he traveled with a master who used to say these things and believed that medicine and food share the same root. He was taught that there are 5 vital energies in the world, and that eating in harmony with these energies helps drive away diseases. Sinclair thinks about this and asks the name of this master. Dominic starts crying and answers that his name is Heojun, and that he misses that person very much. The Lord thinks it is a very unusual name, and judging by the way he is crying, apparently he was a very important person. He asks to be allowed to think for a while, since he cannot simply ask him to cure this disease if he is not a doctor, but warns that he will take care of his future meals. After all, he needs to find out whether he is being deceived or whether he really inherited the knowledge of that so-called master. Sometime later, still in the mansion, he starts walking from one side to the other, extremely worried, because he has never made a VIP nutritional plan before. He is no longer in an ordinary cafeteria and demands a suitable corresponding budget. Then, he opens the door and is startled when asked where he is going. He asks if he really stood there that whole time. Ian, who is a gentleman of the family, answers that he is serving his master, but the MC sees it more as surveillance. Then, he says, he needs to prepare the old man's diet to improve his health and did not expect to have to meet his personal doctor and his head chef. The blonde guy thinks this is impossible and says that everything mentioned is confidential information related to the elder, and someone from outside should not know that. Dominic does not care about that, since he received orders to prepare a meal plan for the head of the house. But the bodyguard says that order was not serious, since he only needs to make a list of healthy foods. The MC says he understands, since if something goes wrong, it will be the night's fault. And here's the guy saying that it is pathetic to think food could cure a medical condition. This irritates him to the point of calling him to make a bet, since he can relieve the Lord's condition with food alone. After all, for some, it is just a meal, but for others, it is more than that. Ian thinks this is fair, and says he is not mocking those who starve, because he just believes it does not work as medicine. Dominic tells him not to get in the way. After all, he received direct orders from the elder and intends to obey them. The knight finds that tone of voice quite bold, but he does not care, because despite speaking to a knight, he is a guest of the elder himself. As soon as he thinks that, he is startled when a sword is pointed at him and says he will not try anything because he was only going to the kitchen. Upon arriving there, the chef asks if the charlatan is still alive. The MC worries about what this guy said to the elder and warns that he is in charge of the Lord's meals for the time being. The chef is startled upon hearing this and asks if, by any chance, Homero Rato is planning to steal his position. He answers that he is not, since he is only going to prepare some ingredients. The chef is not sure whether to accept this and asks how he will separate the ingredients. Dominic says he wants to see what the Lord ate before, so he can prepare something suitable. The knight does not believe that there are ingredients suited to someone's constitution, but the MC picks up a potato and explains that mana itself follows the constitution. So, the ingredients grow by absorbing that mana. The chef more or less understands, because apparently he will choose ingredients that are not suitable for the elder's constitution. Dominic realizes that this world is quite fragile, and that using terms like nutrients and compounds will not work, because no one will understand him. Then, he comments to Ian that he heard the Lord was a knight who reached an extraordinary level in his prime. The blonde guy confirms it, since his boss was even part of the Imperial Guard, but now he is retired. He still trains alone from time to time, but it is very different from when he was active. The chef comments on the elder's food intake, since, even though the leader trains less, he still continued eating the same amount of food. After all, his appetite never changed, and he eats approximately 1.5 times what a normal person would eat. The MC sees the problem, since the Lord eats too much, and to make matters worse, there is always meat in every meal. This catches the guard's attention, and he mentions that whenever the Lord does not feel well, he ends up eating even more meat on purpose. Dominic goes into shock upon hearing this, because it is madness. The chef calls attention to it and mentions that a sick person must eat plenty of meat and fish, and that is how one builds strength to fight diseases. Dominic knows that, in reality, this would only make anyone's situation worse, because during the Lord's active days, his digestion was strong, so he did not have so many problems. But now, he can conclude that these mistaken beliefs caused the disaster they are facing. Knowing this, He orders that, from that day on, Sinclair's table will have no red meat, no fatty fish, no seafood, and no alcohol. The chef panics, since, at this rate, the elder will die, because he only wants to offer a little chicken, white fish, and eggs. The MC takes his hand and asks him to have faith, especially because his own life also depends on it. Sometime later, that night, the lord of the mansion stands before his meal and asks if this is some kind of joke. His expectation was that every day there would be meat and whiskey, but at that moment, the table is completely unfamiliar. His children are actually finding the colors beautiful, and he laughs and decides to try it. After taking a sip of the drink, he realizes it is not wine, and the boys comment that it looks a lot like pomegranate juice and want to know what the Lord thinks. He did not think it was bad, since it has a mild acidity combined with a fruity sweetness. This juice is good for cardiovascular health and for the beauty of the skin. Then, he looks to the side and asks what that different dish is. Dominic explains that they are chopped mushrooms, asparagus, and broccoli, and politely asks him to try it. The Lord brings a spoonful to his mouth and is shocked after tasting it. His children panic at that expression and ask if he is all right. The Lord calls out to the cook to find out what he has been doing to the food. He panics, since he believes he will be killed. But Sinclair finishes chewing and realizes that the flavor is rich, filling his mouth, as well as having a smooth texture. That is the mushroom soup. He admits that the dish is not bad at all, and the MC starts breaking out in a cold sweat and says the main course is still coming. The maid appears and serves the table with the new dish of the night, which will be cod steak with 5 different herbs. The Lord notes that the move this time is fish, and that the outside is fried. In any case, he brings a piece to his mouth and once again is shocked because the inside is incredibly moist and soft. His children worry about that expression and ask him to stop, since they cannot bear watching this anymore. Sinclair says there is no problem and asks them to eat, since the meal is very light. After finishing, he confesses that it was very satisfying, and Dominic breathes a sigh of relief, since he is alive, and making that diet was definitely the right choice. However, out of nowhere, the Lord shouts and points out that it is too early to say whether just this will help his condition, then calls for his guard and points out that they cannot let the guest of the house wander around the enormous castle all night. The MC thinks this sucks, since he has suddenly been placed under house arrest again. That night, after everyone goes to sleep, Sinclair imagines that it will be another night of deep sleep, and the pain in his foot appears every night. This time, there will be no strong whiskey to drown his fear. He accepts this, since giving up would be a loss either way. Only then does he notice something strange, since he did not remember his bed always being this comfortable. It is cozy and soft, and he remembers that, in reality, the meal was also satisfying, and he ate until he was full without getting bloated. He always had days full of meat and alcohol, but the gentle meal he had with all those vegetables was perfect, and he believes that, just as animals need to breathe in harmony with nature, meat and vegetables need to work together. Sometime later, the MC is outside, admiring a butterfly for being free, since he also wanted to fly freely, and he starts saying that he wants to fly beside the butterfly. Ian starts getting irritated by that request and shouts that the request makes no sense at all, and Dominic says he is frustrated since he cannot take even a single step outside, and this is ridiculous when things are out of his reach, and points out that an entire week has already passed since the elder suddenly entered training, and since he has not said anything else, that is why they are in this mess. The knight starts getting irritated with all that talking and goes back to pushing the wheelchair. Dominic takes the chance to ask what exactly changes with isolated training. He replies that, to break through to the next realm, enlightenment is needed, and isolated training is the best way to avoid interruptions. The MC realizes it is like a wuxia novel and asks how long it takes. He says it varies from person to person. The fastest takes a few hours, but it can also take years. Dominic panics, because if it takes years, he will be completely screwed. Because of that, he has an idea and says that he was not ordered to stay locked up, and since he wrote all of the Lord's meal plans, it is only necessary for the knight to be there to serve. The blondie thinks about it and realizes it makes sense. Then, that afternoon, a notice arrives saying that Dominic can return home, and that they will send someone weekly to get some extra information. He is happy with this achievement, since, in exchange, he will receive gold every month and thinks he is way too amazing. Ian tells him to hurry up and pack, since they are leaving, but the MC does not understand why the guy has that luggage and where the hell he is going. Ian says he will go to Evergreen, after all. The Lord ordered him to keep an eye on the MC so he would not try to run away. Dominic simply cannot believe this absurdity. After the trip, they finally arrive in Evergreen, and the MC says it is a fishing village. At that moment, Callan calls out to him, since he never imagined he was still alive, and tells him to hurry and help. Dominic asks if something is happening, and he, desperate, says that the devil's hand appeared in the sea. Ian panics and asks if it has started growing out of control. The bald man replies that it was not exactly like that, since a swarm of farmer turtles appeared, laid eggs on the beach, and it turned into a disaster. The MC has no idea what they are talking about, and the blondie cannot believe that a village chief, especially one of a fishing village, does not know about something like this. Callan explains that the devil's hand is a marine plant that the breeder turtles cultivate. It is also called the tree of the sea, and when it grows, it can surpass 3 times the height of a man and ends up immobilizing fishing boats. The turtles are the worst part, since they cultivate this plant and are incredibly aggressive, to the point of scaring away all the fish from the coast, and the fishermen end up returning empty-handed. Ian comments that it is strange, since he heard that those turtles usually stay away from beaches where people live. Callan laughs, since, in reality, he was deceived during the land negotiations, and when he founded the village, he had no idea that the farmer turtles would appear from time to time. The two think this is absurd, since it is not funny at all. They go to the coast, and, looking at the sea, realize that the devil's hand is really quite large. He keeps asking him to look carefully, but the MC, even while focused, does not understand what is happening. This irritates the knight, because the devil's hand is right in front of them, and he tells him to look at the black things in the water. Dominic calls it seaweed, and Ian asks what he is talking about, since he said 1,000 times that it is the devil's hand. The MC once again points out that it is seaweed and does not understand their sudden regional discrimination, and he is even impressed that it grew so thick that it could be used to prepare an entire soup. He even starts drooling while the other two are shocked by someone saying he would eat the devil's hand. Dominic asks why they would not eat something so good, and they answer that it is simply because it is the devil's hand, and they never thought about it. The MC calls for them to leave, and even suggests to the village chief that they try it, since it is delicious. Ian just watches from afar, since he does not know whether the people of this village are right in the head. After returning to his house, he feels relieved, since it felt as if centuries had passed. The bald man also appears and asks what they should do with the devil's hand he had stored. Dominic is surprised because it has become quite dry, and asks him to hand it over, since he is going to use it. He explains that they are more useful when they are dry. Then, he rolls up his sleeve and says it is time to show his skills after so long. He starts by cutting the garlic, then the green onion, and he heats a pot over high heat, stir-frying the ingredients with oil. Ian starts smelling an incredible aroma, and has, in fact, never smelled anything like this in his entire life. The MC looks at him, but the guy plays it off. He thinks this is amazing, because seeing the seasonings being used so well to the point that people realize it is delicious feels really good. There is also a lot of rice left, and he is going to be generous that day. Besides, he still finds it funny that the knight keeps pretending not to care about the food, even though it can be noticed from far away, since this is the only way he could beat a knight, as he loses in every other aspect. He starts throwing away the rice water, and Ian shouts, wanting to know what he is doing. He explains that the water should be thrown away after all. If there was anything bad, they would notice, and he starts shouting that rice contains starch, lipids, vitamin B1, B2, and so on, until the knight just accepts it, since he does not understand what the hell he is saying. But apparently, it is a good thing. Dominic says that the guy was deceived his whole life. Then, he takes a deep breath and says that he is aware that Ian does not discriminate against commoners like the other knights. After all, he treated him with respect, besides also showing respect to Chief Callan. So, he asks him not to be too strict because the food is finally ready. The knight keeps observing that beautiful appearance, and the village chief appears with a fried fish, since it was supposed to be ready together with the rice. Ian decides it is time to face reality, takes some of the soup, and brings it to his mouth. He simply cannot believe that such good food was really made with the devil's hand. Since he cannot resist, he throws rice into the soup, starts mixing everything, and devours it like a madman. Dominic just watches and asks the chief if it is good. Callan answers that it is sensational. The MC takes advantage of the fact that everyone is enjoying themselves and says that many good dishes will come from that day onward. The two do not quite understand why he said that out of nowhere. In the following days, a carriage approaches the village, and the old man says that it is a small fishing village, and for a small trading company, every customer matters. Callan gives his greetings and immediately says that he passed the position of chief to someone else because he was tired of that work. Lucian laughs at that and points out that this time they have 3 sacks of rice in case they are interested. The MC answers that he is, but asks if they happen to be hungry. The soup is served, but the old man questions what the black thing in it is. Callan does not quite remember the name of the seaweed, but tells him to try it, since it is very good. His grandson, without wasting any time, starts eating and is already telling him to try it, because it has an intense flavor, like most seafood stews. Lucian decides to try it, and realizes that the strong flavor is not from meat, but from the black thing in the soup, and his merchant instincts tell him that it is a gold mine. Because of that, he asks if the thing called seaweed has a more common term. The bald guy does not really know how to answer, but goes straight to the point and says that the popular name is devil's hand. The old man even drops his spoon on the floor from how surprised he is, and asks if he is serious, because, as far as he knows, the devil's hand is a brutal and terrible creature of the waters. On the other hand, his grandson keeps asking to buy it, because he heard that in the capital, unusual ingredients, like monster meat, are already popular, and he confidently says that he sees great potential in it. The old man is surprised by that look. Then, he takes a deep breath and tells him to sell it however he wants, since he is confident. With that resolved, the MC gets their attention, and with a sly look, asks them to get to the negotiations right away. A few days later, in the Lord's territory, a worker takes a deep breath, since he is very thoughtful, because his wife has not recovered her strength after giving birth and is barely eating. At that moment, he smells something and realizes that there is something delicious nearby. Right beside him is Anton, asking everyone to try the seaweed, which is made with the devil's hand, and is an excellent vegetable for them to eat, besides being great for pregnant women and women who have just given birth. That catches the man's attention, and he immediately buys a portion and takes it home. His wife asks what it is, and he simply says that it is something good for someone who has just had a child, and that he was even taught how to prepare it in 1 minute. Moments earlier, when Anton was announcing it, he was saying that he would add perilla oil as well. Immediately, the man asked for the seaweed, since his wife had recovered a little and needed to eat it. The boy was happy to sell it so easily. Back at the village, the MC is laughing like never before, since it is almost time for the teokbokki. That is because the rice was so expensive that he almost could not make it, but he finally managed. He is happy, since the seaweed sold better than he expected, and Anton wants him to keep sending the product, which means life will become a little easier soon. At that moment, Ian appears, saying that the pot is boiling, and admits that the spicy aroma he is smelling is very good. Dominic asks if he is already interested in the dish, and shows the result of what he was making. They give thanks for the delicious food they are about to eat, and just as they are about to take the first bite, a guard appears at the door, shouting for the MC, since he must attend to the lord of the castle. When they realize it, the room is surrounded by knights. The guard begins reading the notice that the lord of those lands, Dominic, must go immediately to the castle, and for that purpose, several soldiers were sent, stating that refusal will not be tolerated. At that moment, Ian interrupts, because he also has orders from the Lord regarding the MC, and because of that, he needs to find out what this is about first, since he has no idea what happened. The soldier points out that they could never presume the Count's intentions, since they are only following orders and simply do not want any delay. The knight thinks about it and tells them to take him, since he will go along. The MC is unconvinced, since at first he thought he was trying to stop the soldiers from taking him because they had shared countless meals together. Ian answers that apparently the brat does not think, since if there had been a problem, the Lord would have already applied the punishment right there. So apparently something urgent happened and he needs to return to the castle immediately. Dominic asks them to at least let him finish his meal first, and notices that his colleague finished everything in one go. After arriving at the mansion, they walk toward the Lord and are startled, since the current Lord is Patrick, Sinclair's son. Immediately, they lower themselves to greet the Count. Patrick tells them to raise their heads and comments that he heard Dominic is supplying a different product and asks if those devil's hands really make the farming turtles go crazy for it. The MC has no idea, because he has never seen a farming turtle eating that, but for the Lord to be mentioning it, it means he discovered that his advertisement was false. Immediately, he bows and says that in his community, there is a custom of cooking the devil's hand and serving it to new mothers. Patrick says he had no idea about that and admits that he never thought Dominic was a bad person, since he entrusted his father's meals to him, and also asks Ian how the MC behaved in his eyes. Dominic begs him to say something good, and the blonde reveals that he is knowledgeable when it comes to ingredients, that he also has an impartial view of the world, with the courage to defend his convictions regardless of social position. At the same time, he balances ideas and reality to solve his problems and, because of that, believes he would be useful anywhere. The Count likes hearing that, since the knight is very strict and even so, praised him so much. And, since he saw that his character is good, there is nothing else to check. Because of that, he informs him that his wife recently gave birth, and the MC is surprised, as well as congratulating him. Patrick reveals that it has already been 2 days since his wife left the room, and, because of that, he wants to entrust her care to Dominic because of the postpartum period. The MC realizes that it is an immediate job offer and answers yes, and that he wants 1 gold coin per week as salary. They go to the room, but Monica shouts that she does not want to see anyone. Ian tries to ask her to at least hear what Dominic has to say, but she is determined and says she does not need anything. The MC laments, since, apparently, his monthly salary has gone down the drain, and asks if the woman has always been so sensitive. He says that he never personally served her, so he cannot say for sure. At that moment, the maid appears, apologizing, because the Countess simply has no appetite. The MC thinks about this, since the Count informed him that his wife has not left the room for 2 days and is still eating seaweed soup, so she does have an appetite. Only then does an idea cross his mind, since he remembers when his sister gave birth in his previous life. His sister, after giving birth, was so swollen that she was barely recognizable. This makes him think that if the Countess has been isolated for so long, then she has postpartum edema. His first question is whether the young lady is swollen. The maid is surprised that he knows that. He explains that her body is storing water and fat to produce milk, and that diet is the most important factor for a quick recovery, and assures her that he can help her with that. The maid asks him to wait for a moment and announces that she is entering the room. At that moment, the knight calls Dominic's attention because he wants to comment on when he mentioned his strong points. That is because he believes Dominic will use those strong points to solve this problem and, for that reason, asks him to do his best. The MC is surprised by those words and asks if they are suddenly friends, and if it was because of the teokbokki dish. Sometime later, the door opens and the maid asks him to enter. Inside, Monica says that she is trusting him since he took responsibility for the Lord's meals. He notices that the situation is serious and that her self-esteem must have suffered a great blow. Because of that, he hopes that postpartum depression has not set in, because that would be bad. She explains that she is reducing her food and even so, her weight is not going down, and asks if she should perhaps eat even less. Dominic answers that no, since, in truth, she needs to eat. She is startled upon hearing this and shouts, asking if he is perhaps mocking her, since he is telling her to lose weight and eat at the same time, because that truly is absurd. He tries to explain that just as she takes medicine prescribed by a healer when she is sick, what he is giving her is also a type of medicine, and if she follows it strictly, she will soon return to her original shape. For that reason, he asks her, please, to promise that she will follow the prescribed meal plan. She says that is fine, since, honestly, she has no other option but to trust him. Because of that, she emphasizes that, for the next 3 weeks, she will leave everything to him until the day she has to receive the blessing ceremony in front of everyone. The MC thanks her because he will do his very best. Later that day, Dominic tells Ian that by properly handling the diet, the postpartum swelling will go down very quickly. But the problem is that they cannot give up high nutrition. The knight asks if, compared to the elder, her condition is more serious. He answers that not exactly, because the Lord's condition was more serious. That is because the gout disease is much more complicated, and what made it easier was the planning of his meals. Therefore, when the problem is clear, the solution is also clear. Now, with the Countess, although the problem is clear, the final goal is to make her recover her previous shape. The swordsman asks if it is impossible to handle one thing at a time. That is because, whenever he trains, he thinks about what he will do next, and reaches his goals by solving one task at a time. For that reason, he wants to know if this is a problem where that type of approach will not work. The MC reflects that, in fact, he was overcomplicating something simple, and, since the final goal is still the final goal, he can just focus on the swelling. Then, sometime later, the Countess's breakfast arrives, and she realizes that it is a very unusual banquet. The maid says that Dominic repeatedly emphasized that she must drink that after every meal. It is water made by boiling pumpkin, and, from that moment on, she will have 3 meals, and before going to sleep, will drink 1 cup of it. Monica, even though she has no idea what it is, says she will eat first and will only understand once she tastes it. But she finds the food a little bland and does not know if her tongue has been affected in such a short time. Emily reinforces that the MC seasoned it lightly on purpose, because he said that this way the swelling will go down. She says she understands, picks up the cup in her hand, and says she is quite sleepy after eating until she was full for the first time in days, and wonders if she should get a little sunlight. The maid takes the opportunity to comment that one of the things she should do is walk for 30 minutes after every meal. She does not like that at all, but decides to do it, since she will obey as agreed. After walking, she feels very tired and had not imagined that her energy was so poor. Emily says she will prepare a bath, in addition to saying that Dominic emphasized that long baths are not good for her at this moment, and that she should not soak for more than 10 minutes. She becomes even more furious, because the MC has just taken away her only joy. After finally finishing her bath, the maid reveals that it is time for the massage, but warns her in advance that she will have to endure a bit of pain. She becomes upset with all of this, and guarantees that if she does not recover, she will not let him escape. Elsewhere, the MC is having his meal when the Count appears, interrupting, and simply says that the smell was so good that he could not control himself, and, because of that, wanted to eat a little too. The Count says that he met his wife at a banquet after his father returned from the capital. That was when they looked at each other and fell in love at first sight. Soon, they swore to spend their lives together and got married. Then, he ended up inheriting the castle as lord when his father retired. In addition, by the goddess's blessing, his wife became pregnant, and he barely had time to breathe. He was too busy taking care of the territory, but he never neglected his wife, because he believed in their love. However, everything changed, and, while drunk, he shouts, asking why his wife is angry with him and what he did wrong. After all, these mood swings are too sudden to keep up with, and he asks if marriages are really like this. The MC continues listening to these complaints, since he knows the real reason behind everything that is happening. Then, wanting to say something, he gets the Count's attention and points out that the important thing is that he still loves his wife. Ian does not really know whether this is a consolation or not. Time passed, and the day of the blessing ceremony finally arrived. Dominic is surprised by the number of people, and that was to be expected, coming from the Lord's son, since many nobles are present. Some girls start gossiping about whether the Countess has changed and laugh, since they are certain she must be fat after giving birth and can hardly wait to see her. The MC says he did not know the ceremony was a place for so much gossip. Ian says that honestly, it is not exactly like that, but some people's attention is clearly somewhere else. Either way, he asks if he is so relaxed about this because only 3 weeks have passed, and he should be worried about the Countess's results. He thinks about it and says that as long as Monica did what he asked, there will be no problem. The knight does not see it that way. since he is merely transferring the responsibility to her. He explains that he trusts the Countess, because that woman has a lot of willpower, and, after correcting her habits and diet, the results would definitely appear. The knight hears those words and thinks about that trust in others. Sometime later, the bishop appears, informing them that the blessing ceremony will begin. He says that life is always precious, and that this gathering is meant to bless a new life, so he asks for everyone's blessing. The door opens, and everyone begins singing a prayer. The count appears with his wife, and the knight is surprised, since his lady definitely has incredible willpower, considering the results she achieved in such a short time. People cannot believe how she does not look different from before having the baby. The women are outraged, since the Countess has just given birth and should not have a body like that, and they even wonder if she used magic. Ian knows that the MC definitely cannot use mana, since he has no talent for magic at all, and yet there is a tremendous weight behind his words. He does not know where so much confidence comes from. At that moment, Dominic says that as soon as the party is over, he will return to Evergreen, and the knight asks if he is perhaps giving up on the position of manager of the Countess's diet, since, as far as he remembers, he was jumping for joy at earning 1 gold coin per week. He says he can do it by sending letters, just like he did with Sinclair, and even if the salary has a small reduction, it will not be a big problem. That is because, at that exact moment, he can smell money. After night arrives, a banquet is served for everyone. A woman continues looking at the Countess with envy, until a maid approaches and says that, from what she found out, someone was assigned to professionally manage Monica's meals. But from what she heard, it was not exactly a cook, but someone who creates personalized meal plans and is also the chief of a small village in the Count's territory. The red-haired woman sees that this is a problem, since getting a village chief is complicated, and the maid agrees, because if the Count's family finds out, it could become a problem. She knows that, if she causes a commotion, she will be at the center of the rumors again, but she also cannot give up so easily, since if Monica managed to recover the body she had before, then she herself can do it too. Sometime later, after Dominic returns, someone knocks on his door, leaving him discouraged at being woken up so early. It was Callan telling him to relax, since he does not want to see someone happy so early, and he even asks if he is not curious to know what happened in the village during the month he was away. He answers that he is not, because the village chief said he would send some letters if anything happened. The bald guy tells him to forget the problems and shows him a bag full of money, since that is the fruit of Anton's seaweed sales. Dominic is surprised, since this implies that Anton separated the company from his grandfather. The village chief confirms it, since he managed to get customers faster by working alone, and also points out that all of this is thanks to the MC, so he thanks him. Dominic says he did not do anything special. After all, he had everyone's help in the process. Besides, he remembers that, in truth, he arrived at a good time, because he wants him to look at something. He shows a map and says that if this works, the village's villagers will never need to worry about their next meal again. They go to the beach, and the MC comments that the water there is pink, and since the coastline curves inward, the waves are incredibly calm. The bald guy agrees, and that is exactly why the fishing boats cannot pull their nets there, so it is basically a dead zone. Dominic adds that even the monstrous farming turtles cannot get close, and it is a waste of a place, because it is perfect. Callan realizes he has heard enough, and wants to know what crazy idea he came up with. He gives a broad smile, and says they will sell the concept of returning to nature. The main attraction will be relaxation, a place to heal the body and soul. In short, they will build a luxury resort. The villagers just look confused, since they have no idea what he is talking about. Sometime later, Ian also arrives at the place and also does not understand what kind of madness is going on there. Everyone is working frenetically, just like the MC, who seems more like he is dancing with the tools. A swordsman takes the chance to ask what the hell he is doing, and he explains that he is more or less supervising the construction project. He points out that it is the strangest supervision he has ever seen in his life, and tells him to hurry up, since he will accompany him. The MC does not understand where they are going, and he says they are going to the meeting of the village chiefs, since 1 month has already passed. Back at the Count's mansion, one of the village chiefs points out that they will prepare a gift for the Count's son, and cannot outdo the other villages. Everyone agrees and starts suggesting what color each one will give. Dominic thinks this is a pain, since they are fighting over colors, and could simply draw sticks. At that moment, the maid appears, informing them that the soldiers are training outside, and that, after that, the Lord plans to have dinner with everyone. Everyone gets excited about finally being able to see the Count, but the MC does not understand why the hell they are excited to see some guy's face. He does not care about that and goes outside. After passing through the training field, the village chiefs laugh at the troops' sloppy training, since they are getting exhausted very quickly, but they also worry whether a war might be happening, even though they are only there for a visit. The MC notices that, in truth, the soldier has explosive diarrhea and runs over, asking when the vomiting started and whether he has any other symptoms, such as nausea, chills, fever, or anything like that. The guy explains that he has been nauseous since morning and, at the moment, has chills, besides his stomach feeling bad. Then, he feels sick again and starts vomiting once more, leaving Dominic worried since this has been happening since morning. Sometime later, he meets with the mansion's chef, and Richard asks if he needs any help. He says that, honestly, he wants to take a quick look at the kitchen. The chef does not mind and only asks if he is looking for something specific. The MC says he is not, and to his surprise, quickly finds what he is looking for. Then he asks if the shellfish arrived in the previous day's delivery. He answers that they did and asks him not to worry because they are not spoiled since they were packed with plenty of ice. Dominic says that is not the problem and wants to know if anyone has already eaten the oysters. He thinks about it and remembers that he gave some to Michi in the morning. The soldier was obsessed with seafood and always pretended he was going to help just to get a special portion. The MC soon realizes that it could be ceviche, raw seafood mixed with lemon juice, vegetables, and seasonings, considered a luxury dish. Since this region is right on the coast, people eat it this way more often than those from inland areas. And raw food is a big problem. The chef says again that the food is not spoiled, but the MC points out that in reality, it is contaminated. Basically, it is called the flu and is transmitted through seafood. Richard thinks about this and is surprised that Dominic knows a little about everything, such as, for example, that this seafood can transmit a flu, but points out that the problem is that the flu is only transmitted in winter, and they are in the wrong season. He even points out that he is holding himself back because the two of them are old work friends. But if he entered any other chef's kitchen and started this kind of drama, the ending would not be very happy. The MC stays silent for a moment and says that the flu transmitted through seafood does not disappear just because it is summer. In the heat, people are usually very afraid of eating seafood because it spoils quickly, and that is the reason why this disease is not seen very often. But Michi is vomiting a lot, with chills all over his body. The chef panics because he had no idea the soldier was that sick. Dominic reinforces that the other soldiers have no symptoms, and if the symptoms appeared on the morning the oysters arrived, then it matches the time the soldier has been sick. Richard thinks about this because normally he would not worry, but they are in the middle of the Black Dragon Squadron's training, and the Lord himself appears to inspect it. If this drags on, he will definitely be fired, and consequently, his family will have a worse life. Suddenly, he hears the MC saying that he will help. He is surprised by this, and Dominic points out that they worked together for a long time, and that he cannot simply leave knowing about this mess. The chef gets emotional, and the MC tells him to hurry because they need to change the menu. Richard apologizes because training in extreme heat is done under the assumption that it is a real battlefield, and food is no exception. Poison can be smuggled into the food, so each ingredient must be reported to the squadron, and the situation had already been reported to the Count, so he regrets it, since all the infected oysters must be discarded immediately. But Dominic asks him to wait, since they cannot throw away such good things, because they just need to cook them, and they will be ready. The chef does not understand what the hell he is saying, because he just heard that he is going to prepare an oyster with the flu. He tries to explain how the flu transmission works, because if they boil it for long enough, the virus will be eliminated. Deep down, he is aware that this type of virus only causes food poisoning, and if heated above 90 degrees, it is killed instantly. Richard asks what they can prepare with the oysters as a cooked dish. He is happy since he wanted to suggest something specific. Meanwhile, the troops continue practicing, and at that moment, the Count smells something good and becomes curious to know what it is. Richard continues with his preparation because he needs to coat the oyster in egg and fry it in plenty of oil. The MC continues coordinating things since they still need to squeeze the juice from the lemons and mix it with sugar to give it a sour touch. At this moment, another employee appears, saying that he was going to shred the chicken for a salad so they could turn it into a soup. Dominic sees no problem since it will be possible to prepare a good dish that way. He continues coordinating carefully, and Ian only watches these actions. Sometime later, on the training field, the soldiers start drooling because of the pleasant smell coming from the kitchen. The Count takes the opportunity to ask what they have for lunch, since the smell is very good, and orders the training to stop so they can eat, always remembering that the soldiers must eat first. Everyone becomes extremely excited, since the best time of the day has arrived. Patrick evaluates that loyalty is not free. His father was different, because he was considered a legendary knight, but he himself is an ordinary person, and has to take every opportunity to connect with his men. The food is served, and the chef apologizes for not being able to prepare more. The Count sees no problem with that. After all, they are in the middle of training, but asks what it is. Richard says that the yellow dish is made by mixing chopped oysters and vegetables. The whole thing is called an oyster pancake. The red soup is made with chicken and spicy vegetables, so they should be careful when eating it. Suddenly, something catches the Count's attention, because one soldier finds it spicy, but even so, he cannot stop eating. Another tells him not to be weak, because if he cannot handle it, he is not a real man. He wonders if it is really that spicy, and decides to take a little with his spoon, bringing it to his mouth. Immediately he notices how hot it is, and it is a different kind of spiciness from what the chef used to make before. It is almost as if his soul is being cleansed. He cannot stop talking about how great the food is, and the chef cries with happiness since they are safe. The MC watches from afar and comments that the smell was so strong that he was initially worried people would not be able to handle it. The swordsman questions whether he really intends to hide his contribution to preparing the food. He does not see any point in doing that, but the blonde guy says that, from what he noticed, the village desperately needs the Lord's support, and that would be the perfect opportunity to claim a reward. Dominic laughs and calls him naive. After all, when the achievement is that obvious, there is no need to brag about it. The swordsman still has no idea what he means. At this moment, the chef appears calling for him and shouts that they succeeded thanks to him, and that the Lord even gave them a special bonus. The MC asks if he really does not intend to keep everything. He denies it, since he wants Dominic to keep everything except the part that would go to the other kitchen employees. After all, they worked hard too. At this moment, the butler appears calling for the MC and informs him that he will meet with the Lord soon, and, because of that, must adjust his clothes immediately for this meeting. He says he understands. He turns to Ian and, with a malicious expression, points out that, as he said before, there was no need to brag. The swordsman gets irritated by this, since the guy is bizarrely strange. Later that afternoon, at the mansion, the Lord thanks the MC for his help in curing a soldier, and says he no longer even remembers how many times he has helped the kingdom, and admits that, thanks to him, the soldiers had a delicious meal. Dominic thanks him for the compliments, and deep down, had imagined that the Count would notice the difference in the food, since his meals are always made by the same chef. Patrick thinks more carefully about the meal and asks whether, if he offered him responsibility for the kitchen and the mansion's affairs, he would refuse. Dominic feels honored, but points out that he already has a talented chef, and besides, the fishing village is betting its future on his project, so he cannot afford the luxury of leaving. The Lord is intrigued by this project, and the MC sees the golden opportunity he had been looking for. So, he explains that Evergreen has always been a deserted fishing village. Things improved recently with the sale of seaweed, but that will disappear as soon as the farming turtles leave, and that is why he has been racking his brain to make sure his people never go hungry again. Patrick understands what this is about, since he is promoting this business through his own efforts, and says he will support everything as planned to help. However, Dominic points out that he does not need charity. The hall falls silent for a moment, and the swordsman becomes confused, just like the Count. Meanwhile, elsewhere, Rondo complains that his stomach hurts and says that if that bastard Anton had not started selling seaweed, his trade would still be well under control. The subordinates remain silent, and he shouts, wanting some solution since no one is saying anything. They look at each other and ask if they should just get rid of the brat or maybe set his warehouse on fire. The merchant gets furious about that, since he is not some bandit and already abandoned the life of a mercenary 10 years ago to become a merchant. A man reports that, from what he heard, Anton's success is due to the chief of a fishing village, and that this person was the one who discovered how seaweed could be profitable. So, if they take care of that chief, Anton's business will collapse. The other subordinates think this idea is brilliant, and the merchant thinks it is great, ordering all the thugs to find the MC and break his spirit in half. Back at the mansion, the Count asks if he understood correctly, since he does not need help. Dominic confirms, because he does not need charity, but instead asks for an investment. Patrick asks for more details. He explains that, if the capital invests initially, he will be able to repay it with significant profit. The Count hears this, tries to hold himself back, and bursts out laughing, since Dominic is much more interesting than he thought, because the world is full of people trying to steal from him, but he wants to make a deal and is even promising a return on the investment. And since it is a deal, he assumes he has some terms prepared. He says yes, and hands over a document for him to analyze. The Count looks at it carefully, and from what he understands, he wants the money, but does not want the Lord to interfere. He likes that courage and informs him that he will provide the funds he requested, and the repayment period will be 10 years. In addition, he will set the interest rate below the banking association's average. That said, he concludes that he realized he was wasting a talented administrator in the kitchen and asks him not to disappoint him. The MC thanks him immensely for this generosity, and the one who becomes happy about it is the Lord, because perhaps his territory may finally gain a landmark that even the nobles of the capital will envy. Back at the village, the bald guy imagines that he is in a dream because the Lord is really investing in the village, and that is a huge achievement. The MC laughs and points out that he is holding the paper upside down. Then, he says they need to speed up construction and that it is a great day to have a barbecue and drink until they are full. Meanwhile, near the village, the thugs finally arrive, and all they can think about is that it has been a while since they truly had fun. At nightfall, Callan says he knew Dominic was special, and that he even managed to secure a major investment for Evergreen, proving that he himself has a great eye for talent. His colleagues tell him not to brag, since he only threw the work onto Dominic because he did not want to learn how to read. The MC finds the night amusing until he hears a noise and asks what is up with the horses arriving at the village. They have no idea who they are, but they know they are not bringing good news. All the mercenaries stand up because they are itching to pick a fight. Dominic gets startled because the villagers always had smiles on their faces, and he no longer remembered that this was a savage truth. Ian also appears to join the fun, and Callan thanks him because he feels safer beside a knight. The blondie tells the MC to go back and hide, but Dominic is already far away, hiding and cheering for their fight. The bandits soon ask who the chief of the village is, and the swordsman points out that they need to capture them alive to find out who is behind this. Callan says he understands, and everyone charges forward, taking down horse after horse and causing chaos on the battlefield. The bandits do not understand how mere fishermen are so strong. They get beaten one by one, and the MC stays quietly watching from afar. He reflects that he has never seen the villagers fight before, and thinks it is much more exciting than watching fights back in his school days. At that moment, a bandit comes up behind him and points a knife at him, since he finally found his target. The guy reflects that he caught the village chief, since he looks exactly like the sketch. He shouts for everyone to stop, or else the village chief will die, and they shout, wanting to know why he did not hide properly. The bandit keeps ordering them to raise their hands, and Ian, disguised as a bandit, passes by and tells him not to make noise. Callan notices this strategy and plays along, asking him to release the village chief and saying they will do anything he asks. The MC also plays along and starts begging for his life while the swordsman moves in for an ambush. However, a guy on the ground shouts to the bandit leader that a knight is approaching, and the bandit, realizing this approach, grabs his sword and prepares to kill Dominic, since, if he is going down, he will take someone with him. The villagers panic and ask him not to do it, just like Ian, who starts to panic because he will not be able to arrive in time. However, the MC grabs the guy's arm and throws him to the ground, leaving even himself confused by it. The bald guy asks what that was, and he answers that it was a shoulder throw. Only then does he wonder if he really did something like that, and if by chance, he is some kind of prodigy. The villagers go over to him because they are worried. On the other hand, Ian keeps watching from afar, since he ended up seeing some kind of mana coming out of Damink. After all the bandits are arrested, they realize they are from the Merchants Guild. Anton confesses that he was already worried about those scumbags showing up at the store and that it was too good to be true. Besides, their reputation is absolute trash, and they will do anything for money, no matter how dirty it is, though he never imagined they would resort to blatant robbery. The guy laughs after hearing that and asks if, by any chance, he knows who Rondo is, since the group is made of bandits and does not take orders from anyone. The MC bursts out laughing and asks if he really does not know that merchant. He comments that he was going to let one of them leave if they cooperated and that he would pretend he saw nothing. Suddenly, one of the bandits volunteers for that, and the group gets furious, since the guy had just said they were a group of bandits. Dominic is surprised that someone pretended to be dumb just seconds earlier, and points out that this only makes him an even bigger bastard, so he is out of the selection. The bandit cannot believe this absurdity, and the group is pleased because justice prevailed. Once again, the MC asks if there are any volunteers, and a boy in the middle of the group replies that he has only been in the guild for 3 months, and that this was his first mission, so if he forgives him, he promises to live an honest life. Ian decides to check and says that, in fact, the boy's hands are still soft, so he does not seem to be lying. They decide to choose this boy to take outside, and by the way, he gets emotional for being chosen. After going somewhere else to talk, Dominic asks if the Merchants Guild gets cheap supplies because it runs its farms for next to nothing. The boy says he heard that the farmers are people who failed to pay their debts, and the guild took over those lands through usury. The MC finds this strange and asks if there is no legal limit on interest rates in the Count's territory. The boy is surprised that he knows that and apologizes, since he is not an intelligent guy who can read like the village chief, so ordinary people have no way of knowing complicated things about the law. The MC realizes that people are the same everywhere and asks for more information about what he heard in the guild. He says that the bandits frequently invade small villages and stores to threaten and assault them, and although it has not been proven, it was said that they were going to intentionally set fire to a rival guild. Anton is startled by this absurdity, since it is now clear that the incident that happened was caused by Rondo's Merchants Guild, so he asks for proof that the leader ordered everything. The boy is not sure if he can help, and hands over a promissory note, since when they completed the job, although he received a different job, it was still issued by that guild. They are surprised by how efficient the boy was, so the MC comments that maybe he will no longer need to live hiding or running away. Lucky does not understand what he means, and Dominic says there are mitigating circumstances, and since he will accept this promissory note, he promises that the village will protect him until everything is over. The boy gets emotional over this huge opportunity and thanks him, promising that he will live an honest life. Sometime later, Rondo is taken to trial and denies what happened at all costs. The Count tells him to keep lying as much as he wants, because with all the evidence, there will be no salvation for him. The guy keeps saying he is innocent, but the judge tells him to stop talking, since he is trying to lie even with all the witnesses present, and points out that, due to arson, assault, fraud, human trafficking, extortion, and robbery, all the guild's assets will be seized as payment, part of which will be used to compensate the victims. In addition, he will be sentenced to forced labor with no possibility of pardon, and his destination will be the Bailey mines. Rondo panics and questions what the bastard is doing at that moment. The Count finds this absurd, since clearly there are people accepting bribes from this piece of shit, and the judge guarantees that he will hunt those people down to eliminate them. He hands over the list of the Merchants Guild's assets, and Patrick notes that there is a lot to learn, and that everything must be put up for auction immediately. The judge informs them that the auction will begin immediately. From afar, Ian asks the MC what his next plan will be. He intends to get as much as he can from this auction, because he especially wants the farm Rondo used for his ingredients. The swordsman finds it strange that he wants the farm and not the guild as a whole. He explains that in order to properly launch the care center, he will need the farm. At that moment, the judge informs them that the auction will begin and that each person can only bid on 2 items that day. People think this is ridiculous, but they are informed that this is the Count's decision because he believes it is unfair for some people to monopolize the seized assets. The people reflect that it makes sense and that they should think carefully about what they will choose. Dominic worries about this and, looking at Patrick, sees the Count giving a thumbs up. This makes him happy since his plan is getting closer and closer to working. The auctioneer starts listing the auction items, such as the guild building, Rondo's residence, among others. Dominic keeps praying to be chosen until it is announced that there will be the Lutvia farm. His eyes light up since, as there is a limit to how many items one can bid on, there will not be much competition, and he hopes he will be the only one interested. With that said, the auction begins. The items are auctioned off one by one, and the next is a dress that Rondo liked to wear. People start whispering about the value, and Dominic comments that he would never accept that even if someone paid him. However, number 35 raises the paddle for the item, and since there was no competition, he becomes the new owner of that outfit. This suspicious guy says the dress is of high quality, and that he will give it to his wife as a gift. The two are sure that is exactly what will happen, and at that moment, the Lutvia farm is announced. He finally sees that the time has come, and the auctioneer points out that the farm is not very large, but the soil is fertile, so anything will grow well there. However, it is surrounded by mountains, which makes expansion difficult, and the road is nothing more than a narrow trail. The current workers are people who could not repay their loans, so all of them will be dismissed, and new employees will have to be hired. People think it is absurd to auction something like that, because just what they will have to pay to expand the place will take an eternity to earn back. Ian asks if he really wants to buy a condemned place like that, and without thinking twice, he replies that it is the perfect place. After obtaining the farm, they go to make a toast, and Anton congratulates him on this new achievement, because even though it is small, it is a solid farm, and he can hardly believe his luck in getting it for the starting price. The MC laughs, since luck had nothing to do with it, because it is simply the heavens rewarding him for being a good guy. But Anton is curious to know the truth about why he bought this farm, and whether he is really turning it into a community farm for the village. Dominic does not really know what to say, and says that, in reality, he needs his friend to find some specific seeds. The boy has no problem with that and asks what he needs. He shows him a list, and Anton emphasizes that getting them is not a problem, but with this variety, he will need to combine them with fertilizers, and it may take some time. The MC replies that he will not need any fertilizer because he will use everything natural. Anton is surprised to hear this and tries to explain how agriculture works, since, as far as he knows, Dominic is a fisherman, but the MC interrupts, saying he is not a fisherman and knows a lot about agriculture, since, apparently, his friend has never heard of organic farming. Ian starts to worry about what Dominic is up to this time. Anton does not really understand how this will work, but says that if he will not need fertilizer or pesticides, he should be able to receive the seeds in about 4 days. The MC thinks this is perfect, since he will be able to pay with seaweed and dried mussels, and they go back to toasting to the success of the village. Sometime later, they leave by carriage, and Dominic, who is feeling sick, asks them to stop, since he is not vomiting on purpose, especially because he does not even think that makes sense. Ian thinks this is annoying and reinforces that they made it clear at the auction that the road to the farm was bad and that he should not have drunk so much the night before. Because of that, he tells him to endure it like a man, and they continue traveling along the bumpy road. Sometime later, they finally arrive, and Dominic even likes the place, since everyone said it was small, but he expected much less. He finally understands why it was expensive for its size, since the soil is incredibly fertile. Now that they have seen the property, he believes they should deal with urgent matters, starting with curing the hangover. The swordsman asks if he is not going to explore the farm more, but he is not too worried about that. After all, it is not like the land is going to run away. So first, he starts boiling water to prepare his hangover-curing soup. He picks up a red liquid, and the blondie has no idea what it is. He has a suspicious smile and says it is frozen ox blood. Ian thinks this is disgusting and asks if he is really planning to eat something like that. The MC understands that some people simply cannot swallow it and tells him to relax, since he will give him seonji. That said, he continues with his preparation. While the seonji and offal are cooking, he prepares the pre-cooked ujeojil that was squeezed at the end. It is seasoned with soy sauce, chili paste, chili flakes, black pepper, among other things. He already starts to feel better just from the incredible smell. Suddenly, Ian asks to use seonji in his dish too, and Dominic finds this strange since he thought he did not want it. He gets a little embarrassed but says he will try it. Then, it is time for the final touch, which is some sliced cheongyang peppers, a bowl of fresh rice cooked on the stove, and finally the dish is complete. He wonders if he made too much, since he ended up making huge portions without thinking. Either way, he knows that if there are leftovers, he can eat them the next day. Without delay, Dominic brings a portion to his mouth and feels his body catch fire from the amount of pepper, and nothing beats that for curing a hangover. His eyes are on fire with how good it is, and the swordsman just watches in silence, unsure if it is really safe to eat, since deep down, he wanted to see how commoners live, but still has a long way to go. When he gathers his courage and brings a portion to his mouth, before he can eat, he hears someone shouting. The MC imagines they must be the farmers who work on the farm, but these people had blood in their eyes, making it clear that the two of them are not welcome. The group asks if the MC is the new owner of the farm and asks him to listen carefully, since they will not be anyone's slaves. Dominic replies that he knows that and that, in fact, no one there is a slave. They get confused by this, and the MC points out that, apparently, the group has been deceived their entire lives. At that moment, a boy appears. It was Lockie, surprised to see that it is the village chief. The MC cannot believe the boy lived in that place and asks how he is, since the promissory note he handed over was a great help. Lockie is happy to know that and says he has just returned. Then he tells his father that the owner of the farm is the village chief he had mentioned before. The man finds this incredible and apologizes for his rudeness earlier, since he heard good things from Lockie. He even thanks him for showing mercy to his son. The MC says there is no need for that. After all, it was thanks to the boy that everything worked out in the end. Suddenly, he hears a noise and notices that it is the workers' stomachs growling. Imagining that they are hungry, he offers them some good hot food so they can eat together. Immediately, all the workers start eating like crazy, and Dominic notices that the amount of food he made will not be enough. Then, he looks to the side and picks some potatoes from the ground. After that, he starts peeling them and politely asks Ian to help with the process. The swordsman takes a deep breath to begin. He grabs the knife in his hand and with absurd mastery starts peeling potato after potato. The workers find this incredible, since, apparently, a knight is also good with a kitchen knife. The MC mixes the potato batter with flour and salt and puts everything to fry in a pan. After the final touch with a pinch of cheongyang pepper, the potato pancake is finally ready. He knows it is not much, but asks them to help themselves. The workers are surprised by its beautiful appearance. Then, they cut a piece and, after eating it, they end up crying over how delicious it is. The two of them like seeing everyone happy, until Dominic remembers that he wanted to say something and asks the workers if, by any chance, they have other plans for the future. Something like returning to their hometowns, looking for another job, or something like that, since they are free, and that is why he wanted to ask. The group thinks about it and replies that they have never done anything their entire lives besides farming, and, because of that, if the MC allows it, they want to continue farming this land. Dominic immediately grabs his hand, thanking him, since he was worried that everyone would simply leave. In that case, he proposes that they sign an employment contract. His conditions are simple. They only need to farm well without using any fertilizer. He himself will keep the entire harvest, since he barely has anything on his property. In exchange, he will pay everyone's wages in gold 4 times a year, and, during high-volume seasons, he will hire helpers. Jorge asks if he really wants them to farm without fertilizer. He replies that he does, and, although it is difficult, it is one of the requirements. The man sees no problem with that, but asks him to follow him for a moment. They go to a warehouse, and he opens the door so they can see inside. Dominic asks what all of that is, and Jorge points out that all those sacks were grown without fertilizer. He is shocked to hear this, and the man explains that, to be honest, they were planning to run away that autumn, since his son was dragged into forced labor, and all his family received were a few sacks. Since they already thought they were going to die, they did not use fertilizer on half of the land. That said, he asks if they could sell all those sacks. The MC thinks this is incredible and replies that he can pay separately, since thanks to this, he will be able to continue his plan. At that moment, Lockie asks to show him something. He says he drew a simple map, since he thought it would make it easier to see everything. Dominic thanks him and is happy to see that the boy has sharp instincts, and if he learns to read and write, he will be a real asset. Thinking about that, he suggests that the boy take responsibility for managing the production and harvest of the farm. The boy is shocked to hear this, but Dominic says it will be a piece of cake for someone smart and only asks him to learn to read and write, as well as do calculations. But he knows that this is little compared to the boy's ability. Lockie is moved by those words and promises that he will do his best. Meanwhile, at the Mercenaries Guild, the receptionist mentions the fishing village, since they need someone who can use second-class magic, such as alarm or copy. Diane is intrigued as to why a small village would need a mage. The receptionist has no idea, and also says that the pay is low and the place is in the middle of nowhere, which is why no mage wants to go, since they are actually offering a room and free food as payment for 3 months. At that very moment, she slams her hand on the counter and announces that she will go to that village immediately. After some time, she arrives at the village and is surprised by the view, since it is far too beautiful to be a simple fishing village. The children are also playing everywhere, showing just how peaceful the place is. She sits down and admits that, at first, she was worried because it was in the countryside, but she believes she will have a lot of fun over the next 3 months, and that, this time, she chose the right job. At that moment, her stomach growls, and she realizes that time passed quickly, and that she should look for somewhere that sells decent food. She barely starts walking before she smells a delicious scent drifting through the air. She believes that a smell this good must mean there is an extremely skilled cook nearby, and she should go ask her for some bread. After arriving at the place, the girl sees some people arguing. The MC was complaining that he still had not eaten, and the other two did not care, since a man should be able to get something through brute force. Diane is startled, since, from what she understood, that food is the last one, and since she has not eaten anything since morning, she is starving and there are no other restaurants. She sees no choice but to cheat. Because of that, she activates her magic, which makes the food fly toward her mouth, and she eats it without even chewing properly, since she found it incredibly delicious. The three do not understand what is going on, since a thief appeared out of nowhere. She apologizes, saying she was so hungry that she lost her head, and introduces herself as a third-class mage, saying that she came at the request of the Mercenaries Guild, and even apologizes for the bread, saying she will pay for it. Dominic introduces himself as the village chief and says there is no problem, since they are just getting to know each other. However, she talks about the bread once again, and asks if he really made it by himself. She also wants to know how he made it, and if, by any chance, he can make more, because she has never tasted anything like it. The MC is surprised by so many compliments and sees a great opportunity. A few days later, the mage is teaching at the school as one of her duties, and the MC thinks this is very good, since the children will grow up learning very well. The swordsman is not sure about that, since Dominic is probably the only person who would hire a mage to teach mathematics. He thinks it is a good idea, since they can get free education by providing 1 extra snack a day. Then, he says that construction is almost finished, so he will be busy with those preparations. The swordsman asks if the target audience will really be noblewomen. He confirms it, although the problem is marketing, since he needs to come up with something soon. After all, the resort is a postpartum recovery center for noblewomen. For this to work, he must invite women who are about to give birth. Ian suggests writing a letter to the Countess, but the MC does not think that would provide a good before and after example. Only then does he realize that, even though the goal is a postpartum care center, there is no rule saying they only accept new mothers. So, if he wants a noble who needs healing and can spread the word, there is only one person for that job. A few weeks later, a carriage arrives at the village, and Viscountess Noella thinks the coastal village is well maintained. Her husband believes it is just a fancy inn and asks if she wants that village chief so badly. She points out that he is only saying that because he did not see how Monica looked after giving birth, and, because of that, she needs to recruit him as her personal chef at all costs. She heard that the MC did not even invite the Countess and believes he was disappointed because he received little gold, so all she has to do is show a little generosity, since, if he goes of his own accord, the royal family will not be able to complain. A few hours later, Dominic welcomes them, introducing himself as the resort manager and village chief. Noella is happy that they finally meet, since, in reality, she wanted to speak with him personally about Countess Monica. He says it is a great honor that a VIP like her remembers him. She does not understand the acronym, and he explains that it is just slang his team uses to refer to very important people. She feels embarrassed and thinks it is incredible how good he is with words. Dominic says that his team will take care of the luggage and asks them to please head to their rooms. The Viscountess is surprised by how well the village leader knows how to treat his superiors and by how beautiful everything around them is. But she still believes she will get bored in, at most, 3 days? The MC laughs at that, since he wants to see it for himself. The two arrive at the place and are already left with their mouths open, questioning whether they are really looking at a mere inn. After all, it looks like a private villa. James says that this is their room and that they can use the area as an office. Then, he pulls the curtain and shows the beautiful view they will have, since the inn has a private beach accessible only to resort guests. The two are amazed by such beauty and even hold hands out of emotion. Meanwhile, outside, Dominic is enjoying the view since it was a success. Ian asks how he knows it was a success. He says that if he does not receive any complaints on opening day, then that is already a battle won. Suddenly, someone shouts for them. It was Diane, complaining that this has already gone too far. Her complaint is due to the fact that she spent the whole morning teaching and then still spent the day fixing the magic device without having rested yet. So it is a breach of contract. The MC asks if she is sure she is going to say that and shows her some delicious sweets to eat. Diane talks back, since she is not dumb enough to fall for a little trick like that, but she starts eating them one by one, since they are delicious, until she gives up and goes back to work. Dominic asks her not to forget the temperature control device, and she, furious, says she will not forget it. Ian thinks this is absurd, since he is seeing a mage being exploited with food, and to make matters worse, still falling for that cheap trick. The MC comments that only the morning exercise program and the meal plan are left. The swordsman is not sure if noble women actually exercise. He explains that when someone is in a place they love, everything seems good, and because of that, he can simply watch. And he even calls him to bet, since he does not believe it. Ian makes it clear that a knight does not get involved in bets, even though he is getting irritated by the provocations. They go see what is happening, and the women are practicing like never before, following Noella's instructions. Dominic teases him since he won the bet, and because of that, wants the gold coin. At that moment, James appears shouting that they have an emergency, since Mrs. Owen has gone into labor. They run to see what it is, but he finds it strange, since her delivery was supposed to happen in 2 months, and because of that, he wants to know where the midwife and the healer are. The boy explains that they went straight to the woman's room and are following the protocols they practiced. The MC thinks this is great, since at least they are prepared. At the location, Mrs. Owen is making an absurd effort, and the midwife asks her to take a deep breath, as she is doing very well. The woman starts sweating a lot and wonders if she is afraid of something going wrong. She knows it is too early and that her baby might not be well. At that moment, she feels a strange aura. It was the priest reciting a magical prayer to calm her down. She feels that she has nothing to fear, since she is in the presence of the midwife and the priest, and needs to be strong so the baby can be born safely. After all that effort, the little boy is born healthy, and everyone congratulates her for doing well. Sometime later, already at night, the news that Mrs. Owen had given birth had already spread throughout the entire place. The women think this news is wonderful, and Noella asks if it really is true that the midwife and the priest were already prepared. The woman answers yes, since she asked the staff, and they said they have a prenatal and postpartum care program ready. They are surprised by such preparation. The young woman reinforces that the maid said no one from outside can enter during the birth and that they also used a cloth to cover the lower part of the body, so only the midwife, the priest, and the healer could see. The Viscountess thinks about it, since it is customary for visitors to watch the birth to offer their blessings, but apparently the inn really blocked people from entering. This makes her imagine what it would be like if she stayed at the inn when she had her child, since that way, she would not need to show the birth to just anyone, and she has decided that her first child will be born there. And so, the world's first postpartum care center began to make an impact on high society, leaving the nobles shocked. Sometime later, Dominic has a smile from ear to ear because of how much money he is making, since at this rate he will be able to pay off his debt very quickly. Callan tells him to stop making those bizarre smiles. Since he looks more like a goblin, he does not care much about that, since he has plenty of reasons to smile, as they will be fully booked until autumn. Besides that, he says that, looking at the reservations, there are many mothers wanting to give birth at the inn, and perhaps it would be interesting to build a temple of the goddess right in the village. That is because the priest said that helping in the rooms helps one reach a higher plane. The noblewomen who are giving birth gave a generous honorarium to the temple and said they would cover the construction costs. The bald man sees no obstacle and asks why he did not accept immediately. He explains that it is an important matter to resolve, but they still need to ask the villagers' opinions. Callan thinks about it and says no one will have a problem with it, since, in fact, they will love it. After all, it is not as if the followers of the goddess of life were obsessed with trivial things. The MC asks if he can proceed. He confirms and says he is going to the seaweed processing factory. Ian watches this and asks the MC if he trusts the former village chief. He answers that obviously he does, and the swordsman says he heard that the bald man does not have much formal education. The MC knows that, but the guy has years of experience and may not know letters and numbers well, but he is a great connoisseur of life. Ian agrees, since the guy is a flexible man. Dominic reinforces that one should always listen to an elder whose mind has not become rigid. When three people walk together, there is always something to learn from at least one of them. The knight thinks about it and says he learned another lesson that day. The MC knows that and even thinks he would be a great teacher. He shows a book and asks him to look carefully. Ian comments that they are cooking only with natural and unadulterated vegetables, but he does not know exactly what that is. Although, judging by the notes, he is planning to open a restaurant. He confirms it since he intends to do that after the resort, because that will be easily copied by other people. So he wants to start a business that is difficult to copy. The swordsman asks what he means by difficult to copy. He answers that it is a tourism business. Meanwhile, at the kingdom's training tower, Sinclair sees that the MC managed to get the investment to build a resort for mothers and even prevented the nobles who showed up to give their blessings from entering. He no longer knows whether he is crazy or bold, and, since he stayed inside the house the entire time to avoid plagues in old age, decides it is time to leave the tower to see the village for himself. He goes to the door and envelops his sword with mana. Then, he imagines what gift he should give Dominic, since he became a sword master thanks to him at that age. However, first, he needs to see his grandson's face. Meanwhile, back in the village, Ian asks if he understood correctly, and the MC once again says that he wants to see him transfer his affiliation to the village. If he does that, he will give him all the tteokbokki he can eat. They continue traveling by carriage, and the MC says he is not joking, since, if he accepts this deal, he could even give him the position of village chief. The knight finds this strange, since Dominic always talks nonsense at every meeting of the village chiefs. He says yes, since those damn meetings are useless. The blonde guy tells him to watch that disrespectful mouth, but he does not care, since it is true, because he sends detailed reports, and doing that once every quarter would be more than enough. Ian gets worried, since a village chief should not be so careless, and points out that, in fact, letters should be enough, but they are easy to forge, and that is why the meetings happen in person, to verify that everything was delivered correctly. The MC realizes that it is true, since there is no registered mail and not even email. The swordsman reinforces that the Count has a good impression of him, but Dominic is not so sure about that, since every time he is kidnapped or dragged to the mansion against his own will. After some time, upon arriving at the mansion, One of the village chiefs comments that the man of the moment has finally arrived and asks if there is any business worth starting in the village. The old man interrupts, because in truth, he wants some business to happen in his own village, not in the others. The fight between them continues to see who gets Dominic's attention, but he finds it annoying, because suddenly the meeting became more exhausting than he imagined. At this moment, the butler appears, saying that one more item has been added to the meeting's agenda. They do not like this at all, since the meeting is almost over, but they completely change their minds, since this was an order from the Lord, and because of that, they became interested in this new agenda item. The butler says that it is related to the arrival of autumn, and that, before that happens, they must plan the subjugation of monsters, since each village must prepare. All the village chiefs get excited, because this moment has finally arrived, and they only want to know the size and duration, and whether the meeting point will be the castle. Dominic, not knowing much about it, asks if this subjugation is dangerous. The old man realizes that it is the MC's first time, and says that the southern region has long been protected by the sea, desert, and mountains, so there are not many monsters. However, it is necessary to eliminate the monsters when the colonies begin to grow. Dominic still finds it strange because everyone is excited about bloodshed. The old man agrees that it is dangerous, but emphasizes that each village gains a lot from it. After all, it is an unplanned mobilization. They will obtain rations, supplies, workers, and much more, and the Lord always pays very well, and that is why everyone gets excited. Dominic imagined that he had nothing to gain from this, and just thinking about it makes his stomach hurt. At this moment, the butler informs him that the Count has summoned him separately, and because of that, the guards appear, taking him away once again against his will. After arriving in the Great Hall, he greets the Lord, and Patrick believes they have already heard about the monster subjugation, and because of that, he has a proposal to make. Dominic asks if he is serious, since he does not understand much about it, and the Count tells him not to worry, since in truth, he wants him to serve as the field kitchen manager for the soldiers in the designated territory. The MC does not like this very much, and asks if, by any chance, this work is not normally done by soldier cooks or by the head chef. He answers yes, since, in fact, the head chef is an excellent cook. However, during the soldier's last training, he witnessed even greater cooking skills, and because of that, there is no reason to hesitate. The MC cannot believe that preventing a flu outbreak ended up turning against him, since it seems like hard work with no financial return. Besides, he is the owner of a resort and gold comes in every month, so there is no reason to take on an exhausting job. Ian notices that he is hesitating over the Lord's proposal and simply cannot believe that a mere village chief is daring to do that. Patrick comments that, from the time he is taking to think, he can presume that a few coins will not buy his time, and the MC immediately bows, since he did not mean to be disrespectful. After all, feeding the soldiers is an important job, and he was only worried about not meeting expectations. The Lord finds this a relief, but reinforces that, if he handles this very well, he intends to give him something he truly needs, and not just a few gold coins. Dominic has no idea what he could be talking about, and admits that Evergreen still has a long way to go before it can prosper, since it is nothing more than a rural village. The Lord finds that pathetic lamenting to be an amusing habit, and believes he should change the present a little. At first, he thought the village was having trouble paying taxes, and if the rumors were exaggerated, instead of reducing the amount, he should reward them in another way. Immediately, the MC draws the Count's attention and once again says that his grace is immeasurable. However, Ian gets irritated once again, because a mere village chief once again dared to interrupt the Count. After they leave the Great Hall, the swordsman asks what the Lord's grace means, which he said to the Lord. Dominic says that it is a dialect from a mountainous region. It means a grace granted by a king. Ian does not like this at all, and, drawing his sword, asks if, by any chance, he is dreaming of betrayal. He says it is nothing like that, and that he is actually happy that the village can participate, even though it will be a one-man show. But if the tax goes down, it is worth trying. Taking advantage of the moment, he asks if, by any chance, he knows anything about the monster subjugation operation, since any information would help. The swordsman thinks about it, turns his face away, and, embarrassed, says that it is also his first time. The MC finds this funny and starts wondering what he should do and whether, by any chance, he needs to ask the head chef something. Ian believes that asking the soldiers would be better, since the reward depends on their satisfaction. Having said that, he goes to meet Mickey and takes the opportunity to ask if he got better after getting sick from the seafood. The soldier laughs and says that he took good care of himself. Yes. Then Dominic explains that he will be in charge of the kitchen during the monster subjugation, and because of that, he wants to know if there is any field meal that the soldiers like. He thinks about it for a bit and answers that the soldiers eat anything, since training and missions are tiring, so whatever there is a win. The MC does not think that helps much, until Mickey remembers something a veteran said, because during subjugation operations, several territories unite to do it. The soldiers from the neighboring territory eat hot stew with a huge piece of meat, and when they ate hard bread and potatoes, they said it was very bad. So, if he probably solves that, everyone will be happy. The MC realizes that this is becoming a competition, and that means it is a matter of pride. He takes his notes, and the knight asks if he is taking the budget into account. Because of that, he believes he should check the budget with the person in charge of finances. The person in charge of the money hands over the report, and the MC cannot believe he will have to work with so little money. The old man comments that, in order to stay close to the county's shared budget, there was a 20% increase compared to last time, so he should not be disappointed. Dominic realizes that he is referring to the county of Delt, and asks why the comparison with there. He realizes that the village of Evergreen is a new village, and that the rumors have not reached there yet. So he explains that Delt's territory has some lands more fertile than the Empire. However, even a territory like that has some problems, such as military strength. Full bellies do not pick up swords. They compensate for that with mercenaries, but it seems that this silently wounded the pride of the Viscount of that kingdom. During the last monster subjugation, this guy took advantage of the moment to do something unusual. The MC imagines what it is, and guesses that it has to do with the soldiers' meals. The old man confirms it, since that was a success. Dominic realizes how the pieces fit together, because the county of Sinclair has been a house of knights for generations. However, Patrick, who is the current lord, is a civil official and not a knight. That is why anything involving soldiers makes him sensitive. He cannot let things fall below the level of the previous count, but, strangely, he was caught off guard by the food and not by military power. Dominic is no longer surprised, because he understands that matching the budget in that way is difficult, but he does not understand why he is going in circles like this. The accountant admits that it will not be easy, but at least the ingredients are cheaper in Delta. The MC thanks him and goes to his dormitory. He calculates that the budget of both kingdoms is the same, but the neighbor has an advantage in ingredients, and because of that, he wonders what he should do. At this moment, Ian returns and regrets not being able to help this time, since he was assigned to command this operation. The MC finds this funny and asks if he will be okay, because if he really is the commander, he believes he will have to fight on the front line. The swordsman realizes that he is worried, but the MC denies it, because he only thinks it would be shameful for a mediocre skill to be exposed in front of the soldiers, and simply asks both of them to do their best to fulfill their assigned roles. Then, he says goodbye, because he needs to redo the meal plan. Ian becomes furious at this, since a mere village chief thinks he can dismiss a knight like that. The next day, the MC meets Anton, and the boy asks if this is really enough, because it is very simple, and he could help cover the money for the seasonings. Dominic refuses, since, if they do that, the Count will not be able to hold his head high, and only asks him to introduce a trustworthy blacksmith and carpenter. Sometime later, in the territory where the troops are gathered, Patrick is talking to some soldiers, until someone appears asking if Count Patrick is there. This is Viscount Delt, saying that he did not expect the Lord to want to march personally. After all, he has so many fine knights under his command that he could stay in a comfortable armchair. He gets irritated by these provocations and retorts, since he was eager to see the skills of the famous Viscount, the fierce one of the battlefields. The fat man feels that indirect jab, and the two stare each other down, leaving the troops worried about how this will turn out. The commander tries to cut through the tension by asking them to eat first, since they are tired from the long journey. Delt says that he recently read a military treatise that described a way to win the hearts of soldiers. And, according to what he read, one must first fill their bellies very well. He also emphasizes that he would love to feed the allies. But money is always a problem. Patrick keeps trying to endure the provocations and confirms that, indeed, the troops need to have full bellies. The Viscount loves hearing that and asks to see the tasty meals of that county. He goes to the table, and the head of his kitchen prepares a delicious banquet that leaves even Patrick's soldiers impressed, since it looks very good. Delt declares that he has always focused on excellent meals, and that even fine ingredients become horrible if the chef ruins them. Then, the fat man calls out to the Count and provokes him, saying that the county must certainly have more delicious food, and asks please for him to teach him. Patrick loves being underestimated like this, and that is why he says he cannot refuse such a request. He asks him to follow, since it would be better to see the food distribution for the soldiers with their own eyes. Meanwhile, the MC is going crazy coordinating the troops from one side to the other because everything is a mess. Ian appears without understanding what this chaos is, and does not understand why Dominic seems nervous, since he was quite used to dealing with these things. Suddenly, it is announced that everyone must show respect. However, Patrick asks them not to worry, since the soldiers can finish their meals peacefully. Meanwhile, the fat man cannot believe what he is seeing. An outdoor buffet has been prepared, and the Viscount questions what the hell this is, since he has never seen food being served this way. The commander assumes that they are using alcohol lamps to keep the food warm, and then organizing everything so they can serve themselves whatever they want to eat. Patrick admits that he found this chef's idea brilliant, and that, when he heard it for the first time, he did not understand, but after testing it, he laughed in admiration. Delt says that he can feel how much the Count cares about his soldiers, but the standard is very high, and the military budget must have had a significant increase. Patrick interrupts, since apparently there has been a misunderstanding, and calls the MC to ask if he happened to receive additional funding for preparing the food, since, in his estimate, the budget for feeding the soldiers was approximately the same as Viscount Delt's. Dominic realizes that this is his chance, since, if he plays his cards right, the tax cut will definitely be his. However, the one who starts speaking is the Viscount, since he is outraged by the variety of dishes, because something like this cannot cost the same budget. The MC asks for permission to explain, and says that, first of all, it is true that a greater variety of dishes increases costs, but they use the allocated budget with extreme care and precision. The Count asks if, in that case, today's meal is a special menu to receive the nobles. He points out that, by no means, is it an extravagant or luxurious meal. That is because everything was prepared strictly within the existing budget, but he admits that there is an important factor, which is knowing how to manage labor. That is because they could not simply reduce the variety of food for the soldiers who work so hard. The Viscount does not understand what else could be cut besides food costs. The soldier says that they assign some soldiers to work in the kitchen, but feeding and cleaning up after 200 people in a short period requires a lot of work. They calmly wait for an answer, and the MC explains that when serving meals, many people are needed to cook on a large scale, in addition to preparation and cleaning. So, in this way, they did not save only on labor, but also on time, which gave them more room to focus on cooking. The Viscount understands to some extent, but he does not think that this alone would make it possible to handle so many types of dishes. Dominic understands the doubt and says that reducing the number of workers will not save only on their wages, but also on the logistical supplies they would normally consume. The soldier also understands, since, if there are fewer workers, the food service would not fall behind. Dominic remembers his village, opens a smile, and says that he will always choose to feed everyone properly. As a chef, he obviously always wants to use the best ingredients. However, if it comes down to choosing high-quality ingredients or making sure everyone can eat, he will obviously find a way to satisfy everyone's hunger in the best way possible. Patrick imagines that this is the reason why the seasoning is so strong. He confirms it and says he expected nothing less from the Lord. When the body is completely exhausted, people no longer need delicate flavors or sophisticated ingredients. The ingredients may not be of high quality, but he never lets anything fall below average. So he reduced costs and invested in strong seasonings to ensure that the food maintains a satisfying flavor. With this whole explanation, the MC starts wondering what the Lord thinks of everything, but he cannot tell, since he is making a bizarre face. Delt thinks about everything he has just heard and admits that it was a long day of great learning. After that, Dominic goes to rest, since everything ended successfully, as he managed to make his rival lower his head and no longer believes the Lord will need anything else. As recognition for the hard work, the village's tax rate was reduced by 20% for the next 3 years, and that is an unbelievable achievement. After nightfall, Ian appears and says that the MC is always talking about food, even after spending the whole day in the kitchen, and asks how much he drank to have such a red face. Dominic smiles and shouts that his goal has been achieved, and that, from that moment on, he is going to take a real vacation. At that instant, he bumps into a rock and rolls down the hill. The swordsman tells him to be quiet and not to move either, but he does not understand why until he notices slime dripping onto his shoulder. Ian gets worried because, all of a sudden, countless giant spiders appear beside Dominic, who is terrified of those monsters. The swordsman wastes no time and moves, cutting down the monsters one by one. After defeating them, he wonders how so many monsters appeared, while Dominic just admires him, since Ian was incredibly cool. The knight tells them to go report to the Lord right away, especially because, if the Spider Queen is in the area, things will get complicated. The swordsman reports everything, and the Count thanks him for the information, saying the gods must be protecting the kingdom. A soldier finds it strange that the Groot spiders are so far from the depths of the cave, since they are rare monsters to see. Delt agrees and wonders if something happened in the mountains for them to move in such large numbers. Ian asks for permission to share his thoughts, and says that Groot spiders are indeed extremely rare, and if a monster like that appears on the surface, it means something is not normal. Patrick assumes he is saying that something unusual happened. He confirms it and believes it has to do with the Queen, and to be more precise, after the Queen finishes changing, she begins preparing to collect an enormous amount of food. The soldier comments that if this only happens with the Spider Queen, then it should not cause any major impact. Ian points out that it is not that simple. That is because the creature those spiders revere as their queen is not a spider, but a sentinel. In truth, she is a giant mutant centipede. They are surprised by this information. So is Dominic, because he finds it strange, since spiders are centipedes' favorite food. The Count asks if that is true. He is startled by the question and answers that yes, although when it comes to monsters, he is not so sure. Normally, centipedes hunt spiders to survive. Patrick finds it very strange that the spiders would gather food for a natural enemy. The Viscount wonders if it is some kind of tribute, so they will not be eaten. The MC says that even if that is the case, it is still strange. That is because spiders usually pile up rotten carcasses to eat, while centipedes do not eat anything rotten. Their eating habits are different. They realize that things are becoming more and more complicated, until an idea comes to Dominic's mind, and he asks the Lord whether that prey might actually be an offering to the centipede. He does not understand what that means, and the MC suggests that maybe it is not being offered to the centipede, but to another entity that can get rid of its natural enemy. Patrick immediately understands what he is talking about and shouts for them to select the best elite knights to form a reconnaissance group. The mission is to discover the connection between the spiders and the centipede and, if possible, kill the queen. Ian says he understood perfectly, but lastly, the Count calls for the MC, who is confused about being summoned, and in the next moment, he is holding a sword for battle, which leaves him furious, wanting to know what the hell is going on. He asks if there is still time to run away, but the swordsman does not recommend that, since violating military orders can lead to the death penalty. He does not care about that, since he is not even a soldier, but the swordsman regretfully says that once he accepts the mission, he is officially part of the armed forces. The MC no longer cares about anything, since he will end up dead either way, but Ian reassures him, saying they will protect him with all their strength. Dominic does not really believe that, since the army does not even know him. Suddenly, he gets such a fright that it almost takes his life, since countless giant birds are flying in front of him. The knight explains that they are wyverns, and that, at this time of year, they appear in the mountains for mating season. Dominic is relieved, since at least they are far away. Suddenly, a soldier shouts, calling everyone, and they go see what it is, coming face to face with an unbearable smell. Inside the cave, there were countless bodies of dead animals. Ian tries to imagine what it could be, and the MC is not sure, but believes the monster responsible is incredibly huge to create piles of corpses like that. The blondie starts to worry, since its size may be even larger than the academics announced, and a strong tremor begins to happen in the area. Dominic begs for this to be just a simple earthquake until an explosion happens and a colossal centipede appears, leaving the MC scared shitless. The captain shouts for the soldiers to advance, since they must stop the monster at all costs. But the MC, on the other hand, starts running like he has never run in his life. At this moment, Ian shouts for the MC to ask the Count for reinforcements, but he worries about what will happen to everyone in the meantime. The blondie, on top of the monster, shouts that he will be fine, but Dominic knows that this battle is madness. Several soldiers are already injured, and if this continues, they will not stand a chance. Unfortunately, the centipede is very fast, and its carapace is incredibly tough. At that instant, a memory from his past life flashes through his mind. A sergeant told him to look forward and explained that since ancient times, if chickens are fed centipedes, the health benefits are greater than any herbal medicine. Centipedes are crazy about spiders, and chickens are crazy about centipedes. The MC reflects on this and imagines that there are the wyverns, which approach for mating season. Meanwhile, Ian continues in a frantic battle with the centipede until he is startled to see the MC holding a bottle like a madman and does not understand why the hell the brat still has not run away. The swordsman shouts once again for him to run, but the MC throws the bottle and says he missed because of him. Ian thinks carefully about what he can do, jumps from the centipede toward the Molotov, and, getting close enough, launches an attack that sends the bottle against the monster, setting its entire body on fire. Dominic asks if he is okay, and the swordsman shouts furiously, since he had the nerve to throw a firebomb at his superior. The MC tells him not to act like an idiot, since they need to hide. But at that moment, they hear something and realize the situation is getting worse, because even the wyverns have appeared. Ian prepares to fight to the death, but the MC asks what his problem is, since the chickens have appeared, so they just need to stay out of it. He has no idea what he means by chickens, and Dominic explains that centipedes love spiders, chickens love centipedes, and that is just common sense. Because of that, he tells him to duck so he does not get caught in the crossfire. The wyverns fly toward the centipede and start biting its entire body until they completely finish it off. The knight does not understand how the hell he knew that a wyvern hunted centipedes. The MC admits that he did not know 100%, but he was sure they would not ignore the centipede when they saw it. That is because, from what he heard, these monsters are in mating season, and the fact that they appeared on the mountain means they are preparing to mate and raise their young. That said, they would not let a powerful and violent monster live near the nest, especially when that monster is the perfect meal for their offspring. Ian finally understands, but the MC wastes no time and asks if, by any chance, he will receive a very big reward for this. After they return to the kingdom, the Count calls Dominic and says that, thanks to the wisdom and cunning he used in battle, the army suffered no casualties, so he will receive a reward. Since he is not military, he cannot grant him a promotion. However, he will receive a bonus equivalent to that of a centurion and a silver medal. All the soldiers congratulate him on this achievement because it was definitely deserved. However, the MC cannot believe this is possible and, while returning to his village, wonders what the hell he's gonna do with a damn silver medal. That is because it is purely symbolic and worth nothing. The swordsman appears and asks what he is complaining about. Dominic realizes that his friend has returned, since he wanted to know if he will still continue as commander. He replies that command was returned to the elder, and, because of that, he will return to his original duty. After all, the former lord's order was to protect the chief of Evergreen Village. The MC tells him to cheer up, since he is still a knight and not an imprisoned idiot like himself. Ian does not understand what he is complaining about, and he says it is simple, since he won a silver symbol that will not be of any use to him. The swordsman reveals that the silver medal grants something more than honor. That is because it also serves as a voucher to claim the most valuable loot from the battlefield. The MC had no idea about that and wonders what that reward would be. The swordsman believes it is the centipede's carapace. Dominic finally celebrates, because something good happened in his shitty life. The monster subjugation had not ended yet, but Dominic returned to the village with the Lord's permission. A few days of absolute peace followed. He was excited, preparing some food, until his special seafood, jampong, was ready. He tells them to grab a bowl, and Callan is already drooling from hunger, just like the swordsman and Diane, who eats without even asking and suffers for it, because it is far too spicy to put that much in her mouth at once. This time, he has a special guest at home, the former Lord Sinclair, who finds the food magnificent. The MC, a little awkwardly, asks if he is not eating too much, but the elder sees no problem, since he ate little at the resort. Dominic understands that, but he is worried because jampong is a little bad for gout. Sinclair tells him not to underestimate the body of a swordmaster and, excitedly, says the meal is fabulously spicy. Dominic realizes he is exaggerating and asks when he will return to the kingdom, since he stayed at the resort for a long period. The elder believes he will stay at least until the auction for the centipede's carapace, since an event will take place that day. Callan asks if it is really necessary to hold this auction in the village, because from what he heard, if they held it in the capital, they would earn enough to rebuild Evergreen twice. The MC points out that, in truth, they will earn more than double what they would earn in the capital and, because of that, asks them to listen carefully to why. Sometime later, a group is relieved because they finally arrived in Evergreen, even though it is bigger than they imagined. They notice how incredible the place is, and right at the entrance, a vendor offers them a bowl of food because he noticed that they are new adventurers. They start drooling when they see the dish, and the group leader is relieved to see his group getting along well with the village. Sometime later, they make a purchase and gather together, since they all enjoyed the place. Meanwhile, the MC is watching from above, happy to see his village prosper. At this moment, Anton appears with a new tea for Dominic to try, and the MC thinks about what he said regarding earning double. During the meeting, he said that if they sell it in the capital, it may bring a high price, but the fees and taxes are absurd. The bald guy agrees, but still believes it will be difficult to obtain the full amount if they hold it in the village. The MC explains that this is the point, because the auction itself is not important, but the demand it brings. The group does not understand what he means. He explains that the village is very far from the big cities. However, they are holding an auction for a rare centipede carapace, so people will not leave immediately. The elder finally understands what that means. Dominic continues the explanation, starting with the fact that people will spend a lot on lodging, food, among other things, and since they travel long distances, they will stay for a few more days. Callan sees the point, since the new restaurants and shops have adapted well to the village, besides the resort having worked out very well. Sinclair understands even more why Patrick wanted to recruit the MC, and once again, asks if he is interested in becoming an administrator in the kingdom. The MC thanks him for the opportunity, but says he is already happy just being the village chief. He thinks about this meeting and is confident that he will be able to make a fortune. Anton says that the tea house is also doing very well because they used many magic tools to meet the deadline and will recover the costs quickly. Dominic is aware of that because they built a 3-story house, and this will be the landmark of the village. The boy comments that the eve of the birth festival will be soon and hopes nothing goes wrong. As for the birth festival, it is a festival to pray for and bless the health and future of children. They count on the presence of priests of the goddess of life who helped at the resort. He thinks this is perfect because when it comes to festivals, nothing beats a small prayer for good luck, since, as the priests are offering their blessings, everyone will want to buy a talisman. He finds it so relaxing that he can even hear the money coming in, because he needs to make a fortune as quickly as possible so he can retire. Suddenly, Dominic hears someone shouting to get out of the way. Everyone looks down to see what is happening. A group is shouting at a young woman because they do not mind hitting women. However, she makes it clear that this is great because she also loves hitting men. The MC panics since things have gone crazy very quickly. The group once again tells her to give up her place, or else they will have to show her the hard way how to break bones so she learns. She tells them to stop talking, since a barking dog does not bite. The leader gets furious and orders his henchmen to deal with her, but Emmeline beats all of them up, since there is nothing better than brats learning a lesson through a beating. At this moment, the MC appears, asking them to stop, and thinks that all of them were extremely unlucky, since, out of all the women, they picked a fight with a former commander of the mercenary squad. One of the guys gets up asking if Damink is the village chief by any chance, and shouts, wanting to know if they are really going to reject merchants like them who came to liven up the festival in the village. Emmeline finds it absurd that they would come with this talk about livening things up. The MC makes it clear that he did not stop anyone from entering, since they will always welcome merchants. But from what he witnessed, it was the troublemakers who started the fight. He says that is not what happened, since in truth, the woman was the one who raised her hand first, but asked them to forget it, since they will give up on this place, and only wants them to let them stay on the other side of the square until the festival ends. Damink finds this absurd and asks them to follow him, since they are there for business. He thinks it is a pain that this type of guy always exists at every festival, and that he cannot let them ruin the tourists' mood. They go to the town hall, and the merchants complain that it is too far from the square, and prepare to make a negotiation that would please the MC. However, he warns them that they will end up being handcuffed because, in case they do not know, the former count of the kingdom is staying at the resort. The guy panics upon hearing this and states that he will stay quietly in his corner. They prepare to leave, but Damink tells them to stop, since he has not even shown them the fixed price system yet, and orders them to write down the items and prices, displaying everything clearly in front of the stall. They get furious, since they are being manipulated and have nothing they can do. After they leave, the MC asks Lockie to tell the guys from the village association who are patrolling that if any merchant from outside appears, they must be sent to the town hall. The boy says he will do it immediately and informs him that Sinclair asked the village chief to go to his house before dinner, as well as the swordsman. The MC wonders if something happened and starts thinking about the possibilities, since he might end up getting a valuable connection. He runs off, since he does not want to get scolded, and the swordsman realizes that the guy does not even know how to hide it, since he clearly saw an opportunity to make more money. Arriving at the inn, he greets the former lord, and a dwarf, present in the room, gives his greetings. In this other world, various demi-humans exist, and the most common are elves and beastkin, but dwarves also exist. Stonehammer introduces himself and asks if, by any chance, this is the first time he is seeing a dwarf, since he is staring so much. The MC apologizes, since it is indeed true, but reflects that, in reality, there is not even a reason for it, because all he knows is that demi-humans are under the protection of the nobles. Sinclair calls out to the swordsman and asks if his body has been itching lately, since it is clear just by looking at him. He confirms and says that it is somewhat unbearable. The elder calls for Damink and tells him to go to the front of the resort at dawn, and he asks if, by any chance, Ian will also become a swordmaster. Sinclair tells him to be careful with what he says, since becoming a swordmaster is not as common as an orc living in the hills, because in truth, he has only reached the stage of controlling mana properly. The MC finds this strange, because he believed the knight already knew how to do that, since he thought he had seen him using mana during the fight against the giant centipede. Ian explains that there is a huge difference between manifesting mana and controlling will. Damink does not quite understand, but his bigger question is why he was called and whether, by any chance, it was just to be introduced to Stonehammer. The elder laughs and says that, in truth, he wanted to ask him to let the dwarf stay in Evergreen for a while. The MC assumes he must be going on vacation, but the former lord says that, in reality, he would be living in the village. Damink does not know if it is a good idea for a dwarf to join the village, since they do not have mines, blacksmiths, or even a famous brewery, which they usually like. Stonehammer cannot believe that the village also has no mines or blacksmith. That expression makes it clear to the MC that, in fact, the dwarf is not on vacation, but rather looking for work. Sinclair notices how clever the village chief is, and reveals that, in truth, Stonehammer is a fugitive. The MC immediately refuses, and even allows him to stay for a short trip, but living there would not be allowed, because if they shelter a criminal, the entire village could be punished as an accomplice. The dwarf stiffens, since at no point was it said that he committed a crime. Damink does not understand this, since he is a fugitive, but has not committed any crime, and asks who is pursuing him. Stonehammer answers that no one is, because he simply hates being dragged into irritating human politics, and that is why he asked Sinclair to recommend him a quiet place to live. The MC finally understands how great this is, because a dwarf simply fell into their lap, and he immediately welcomes him to Evergreen. Stonehammer finds this sudden change of mind very strange and asks if, by any chance, he can build his house on the hill. The MC sees no problem and even suggests a place for the blacksmith. This makes the dwarf like him even more. At this moment, Sinclair interrupts because he wants to know what he meant by mentioning that troublesome things might happen and whether a war or something like that is starting. Stonehammer says it is nothing serious because he was simply passed out in an alley after drinking too much and heard something. In short, what he heard was that the Crown Prince is not the Emperor's son. All three of them are shocked by this information, and he goes on to say that, apparently, the arrogant bastard is not the biological son of the Emperor, and it even makes sense, since they do not look alike at all. He sees the strange expressions on the three of them and starts worrying whether this is a big problem for humans. The next day, the MC asks whether he reported the gossip to anyone else. Stonehammer tells him not to worry, because even if humans are not trustworthy, dwarves do not lie. He says that it is fine, but asks him not to repeat it, because it is a relief that only they heard it. Otherwise, they would be in trouble. The little bearded man sees no problem in keeping a simple secret and asks to buy some sausages, as well as beer. While he is devouring everything, the MC and Ian come to the conclusion that neither of them managed to sleep properly after learning about the scandal. That is because, clearly, such explosive news would keep anyone awake, except for the dwarf, who seems more excited than ever. The MC explains that the stalls do not open every day and are only open because it is the eve of the festival. But even so, there are usually several on the street serving the resort guests. Then the two of them, still worried about the situation, simply hope that the dwarf does not cause any problems. Stonehammer starts drinking like crazy, going from one place to another, and the two of them become increasingly terrified by the fact that the dwarf could spread the rumor at any moment. The next day, the first birth festival began. The priest is blessing another child born in Evergreen and starts his prayer. All the nobles present also pray together, and the MC reflects on what a possessive spirit sitting in prayer is. Ian says that it is a divine descent, although he has only heard about it and has never actually seen it. Dominic feels embarrassed, because it is very similar to the fact that he came from another world, but all he can imagine is that the goddess descended to bless everyone, and they definitely will not forget this festival. Now, all that remains is the auction at night, and the swordsman asks if they really need to do this. He answers that they do, because that is exactly where the romance is, since along with the auction, there will be a masquerade ball on the beach at night. The women find it incredible that the village chief is also organizing an auction and a ball, and even believe that he is from a fallen noble family. Her friend is not sure, but thinks it is very romantic, because if they pay a little extra, they can choose a pretty mask. They can also participate in the ball, even if they do not participate in the auction. At this moment, Lockie appears saying that the masks are selling like crazy, and the MC asks him to make sure to keep a good record of what is being sold, because they need to distribute the profits to the makers. Then the dwarf appears, and after being questioned about what the hell he is wearing, says that he needs to show off his body because it is a custom of his race. Then he says that he also wants to participate in the auction. Dominic sees no problem, but asks if by any chance he has money. He says he does not, but points out that his very existence is considered money. He says that before the centipede skin auction begins, he can sell 5 of his craft vouchers, and must say that he will make whatever they want within 3 months after the forge is completed. That should be enough to buy a few pieces of the centipede skin. The MC finds it incredible how a dwarf is so confident even without money, and that is amazing. It is announced that the auction will begin soon, so the two of them run off, since they cannot be late. After that, at the resort, the MC asks Ian to go, since he himself will stay inside the inn. The swordsman finds it strange, since he imagined it would be a great opportunity for the village chief to make connections. He points out that a masquerade ball is taking place, so everyone is too busy looking for romance, and shows him a piece of paper, since they can make a fortune with it. In addition, he says he will give him a brand new sword and armor, since they have been through many things together. Ian thanks him, although he is perfectly fine with his sword. That is because he inherited it from his parents, and although he appreciates the intention, he does not intend to replace it. Dominic sees no problem, because he is sure the swordsman will say something when the time comes, and says that the time has finally arrived and he can no longer contain himself, since the time has finally come for them to go eat jajangmyeon. That's all, folks. If you enjoy the video, subscribe and hit the bell. Thanks.